Welcome to the Alaskan Journey podcast. My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm your first friend in Alaska, and the purpose of this podcast is to answer the questions people have as they're moving to Alaska and really to talk about what it's like living on the last frontier from the perspective of people who actually live here. And today I'm very lucky to be joined by some guests coming in from the Eagle River and Chugiak Historical Society. I've got Connie, Kay, and Patty, and they're going to be talking all about what living in Eagle River during the past couple decades has been like. So, ladies, thank you very much for joining us. Last couple decades, yeah. Man, I guess it's actually getting close to 100 years, isn't it? Man, that's wild thinking about that. Okay, well, real quick, let's go and talk a little bit about everyone's history a little bit. So let's see. Connie, can we go ahead and start with you and just a little bit on your background history and all that good stuff?
Well, I came to Eagle River when I was 3 and went to school here, went to school at the Territorial School. So I learned that we had to have growth, I can remember when the streets were being paved. They were all not paved, so they were potholes. And my father was a builder, a contractor in Eagle River, so he helped build our community from homes to businesses. And we owned several businesses in Eagle River. And I graduated in Chugiak High in 1971. And I've been involved with volunteering at the Historical Society for about 18 years. I love our community, and, we have a lot of growth now, which you just have to go with the growth, So that's what I do.
Okay, outstanding. All right, Kay, what's your, I understand you've got a little bit of history here, so.
Just a little bit. I'm kind of Johnny come lately. I didn't get here till the 60s. I was about 12 then.
Okay, outstanding. So 60s, and how old were you when you got here?
Date myself. I was about 12. I came up here on my birthday, and we've been here ever since, and married a local homestead boy and learned how to homestead, and 3 boys. That's about the extent of it. Oh, I went to Chugiak High School, too.
Did.
Our parents helped build that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you guys were like one of the first classes that went through there.
We were the first one.
The
that all
first
went
one.
Through. Yeah.
Man, that's awesome. All right, Patty, you're up.
Well, my parents brought me to Alaska when I was 4 years old, and we drove up the Alcan and from Michigan, and arrived in Alaska on Halloween night of 1958. And it wasn't even a state then, but a couple months later it was.
Yeah.
And my folks lived in Anchorage. We lived in Anchorage for the first couple of years that we were here. And then my dad started investigating homesteading, because you could still do that then, and staked a homestead on the South Fork side of Eagle River. Built the Homestead Act said you had to either clear 20 acres and live there for a year, or clear 10 acres and live there for 2 years. And he cleared 20 acres, and it just never left. My mother lived there until she passed away just a couple of years ago, and that homestead is still in my family. So I've lived in the area almost all my adult life, and got involved with the Historical Society after I retired last year. Because I love history, and I happen to be the age where I remember some of the local history. So, and it really has changed, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it has.
Outstanding. Now, real quick, let's go and just jump in here then. Who were the first people who really decided to settle here, and who were they? Like what people were excited about going and settling and homesteading the Eagle River and Chugiak area?
I believe that quite a few of the settlers were colonists from Palmer, like Pipples. that homesteaded here.
Really? Okay, that's
They were colonists. Vanovers, and you know the street, Vanover Street, they came as children as colonists.
and
How about the Briggs?
And the Briggs, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and was yeah. So I guess was what about Palmer didn't work out? Like what about
Well, they were children of the colonists, came in the 30s.
oh
So
okay.
when they grew up, some of them, well, like the Vanovers, Joanne, her maiden name was Lentz. And she married John Vanover. They first started a pig farm, you know where Costco is off of McGraw? That wasn't Costco. It was a pig farm. And then they bought the pigs from Briggs's in Eagle River in 1951. So her home on Vanover Street has been there since
The
51.
original ones.
The original.
Gotcha. Man, I would not have thought of that, but that
Yeah.
kind of does
and
make
then the
sense.
military, you know, if it wasn't for the military, my husband's father was 1947. He heard about, you know, this Homestead Act, home site and homestead. So he went, that's the thought. And he was a farmer from Mississippi. So he thought, I can do this. And he hitchhiked to Eagle River and found his 5-acre parcel right on Firehouse Lane to the Eagle River Grade School. That was his parcel.
So for people who might not be aware, what historically is homesteading?
Well, can you
160
explain that
acres.
better?
Well, my understanding is the Homestead Act was from the settlement of the Midwest in the 1860s, I think, is when somewhere in that area, and it was intended to help settle areas and develop agriculture. It was not for my family. You know, we lived on the side of a mountain, so clearing 20 acres wasn't really a
It
good
was hard.
agricultural choice. But
But he still they
the
still
Homestead
had,
Act
yeah.
still existed, and land was being opened up in Alaska, and that was a way that people could settle that land and use it for something.
Tell them where the homesteads are and where the home sites are, because that's real interesting along the Glen Highway.
Oh yes. Well, I even think of Mr. Oberg. You know, his family, brothers, all, and they were ex-military. You know, I mean, and I don't know if you ever went to any of their celebration of life. They were known to make something out of nothing because they could fabricate anything. They were from Wyoming, farmers from Wyoming. So between the military and people hearing about the Homesteading Act, I think I could do that. I want to, you know, the free land.
Right. So it really was something that would be really appealing to like someone more with an agricultural kind of a background. I know they had the New Deal where they were trying to colonize Palmer, and I mean that was almost exclusively farmers and folks like that. And then they just decided that I guess all the land had kind of been parsed out at that point in Palmer, and so Eagle River, Chugiak was just kind of the next place that they were looking at.
But I think most of the people that homesteaded in the Eagle River area are doing it more for an investment thing. I mean, we had to, put our 10 or 20 acres in rye, and, we had to live on the land, but still, for the most part, it was to acquire land, not so much farming.
Well, I think of Jack Stewart and Johnny Johnson.
Yeah.
Flipping a coin of which they found that property where if you know where P&M Garden is, they flipped. Jack got the left side and Johnny got the right side. And the street that all the houses are right down past the greenhouse, that's all of his children. I don't know if you know that. They all have a parcel there.
And we were all real original. We named all of our roads after ourselves.
I mean, it does make it pretty simple, yeah.
Well, we were just
Or our favorite wine.
right. Like her mother made a post. We have an article in the newspaper that says our roads names tell a real story. And her mom made a quote that Joe would bring home some cheap wine, Boone's Farm, and it was called Wild Mountain. And there's a road on Highland called Wild Mountain.
It's like everything's got a history.
Yeah, yes.
Oh, that's awesome. So about what time did, let's see, because the colonists, they came in the 30s, it was right around like the 50s, a little bit of the 60s, 70s. That's really when
The boom.
and the development for Eagle River and Chugiak
Yes.
started.
Yeah, people started moving out here.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't just the military. My dad was civil service,
Oh, that's
and
right.
so was Harp's folks.
Oh, that's right. Well, if it wasn't military, it was
But we worked
civil
for the
ser-
military.
Yeah, you worked for the
Yeah,
military.
my dad worked he was a civilian engineer for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for many years, and then
I
went to work
know.
for the Air Force Civil Engineers after that. So, people that were homesteaders often had a day job,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah. Well, that is interesting that, sounds like, the homesteaders could kind of almost be this part-time thing. Because, I hear homesteading, I'm thinking like, the stereotypical, frontiersmen clearing their own land, living off the produce and all that, but not necessarily what we were doing here in Eagle River, Chugiak.
Like
But
Mr.
we had
Pipple,
our colorful people.
yeah, Mr. Pipple did. You know where the business boulevard is in our town square? That was all Pipple's. It's called Pipple's Field, and it was all potato and cabbage. There was a little pen that had pigs in it for a while. Got pictures of the pigs in Pipplesfield because there's been controversies. No pigs in Pipplesfield? Yes. So, and you know where their house was? Do you know where Pipple's house was? So you know where the gas station, it was Tesoro years ago, that's on the Loop Road across
Is it
from
Circle
Walgreens?
K? What's
Is that Express now?
something?
I
Speedway.
think so, yeah.
It used to be
Speedway.
Tesoro.
Yeah.
That was their home. It was a little yellow house and little garage. Yeah. And, they had some property on that side. But there was 80 acres where Business Boulevard. That's where we're wanting to get the drone film.
And then when they were clearing that all out, I got a dump truck to bring me the soil up there. to
Oh, it
my
was
house.
good soil because it had potatoes. Look at the compost that it made,
Yeah.
too.
Pig droppings over the
Right.
years.
And there was a airstrip out there also. Chet D put that airstrip in because he had an airplane, and he owned the gas station where McDonald's is today. So the Pipples,
Frontier.
yeah. So now is it
station.
Chevron? It's a Chevron now.
Interesting. So did most of those homesteading families, did most of them end up kind of staying in the area? Or?
I
Still
would
here?
say so.
Yeah.
Until they
Many of them did.
Many did until they
My
passed.
boys don't want the land, though.
Yeah.
They've moved on.
Yeah, they went to the valley. Everybody that lived here decided they wanted more space and less rules, and they went to Palmer and Wasilla or Sutton.
Our children.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a familiar story these days.
And people had bigger families then, My folks had 6 kids, and if you had farm chores, you had somebody to do them,
For sure.
Absolutely. So where in Eagle River and Chugiak were people trying to settle? Like, was it, we talked about the Pipples kind of in what's now the kind of the commercial sector, but where were people really trying to settle?
Well, it was really lots of woods. So, like Glenn and Del Briggs, they did the Eagle River Heights.
Right.
And that's across the street from the Lions Park, that first subdivision. And then the subdivision where Man-O-War and all of those streets are, that was in the 80s. Do you remember the stages, Kay, of the different subdivisions? And then they
I just remember the Walmart. And the
Oh,
Money,
God,
that
Danny
was all
Bell.
Bell's.
Danny Bell. Yeah.
And Bell, he had a house on a knoll, right? So when he sold that, and made his fortune, nobody was going to
He
live in
burned
his
it.
house.
He
So we
burned
had this big torched house.
He torched it. But you know the story about him,
like-
Highland?
Nuh-uh, what happened there?
He decided, he was a character.
Oh, was he?
He worked on Fort Rich. Was he civil service? I don't know. I think he was. Anyway, he wanted a shortcut. He didn't want to come down through Eagle River and go to Fort Rich. So he cut the what you call it, the road, and he didn't have a permit to do it, and the state made him reseed it, and he reseeded it with turnip greens. He planted turnips.
You should have met this guy.
So guess what? The bridge is named Briggs's Bridge. Briggs and Danny Bell had war all the time.
Thank you for bringing that up. I
Okay.
even wrote a letter to our legislators about that.
And so a lot of the community back in the day that knew the history went, well, I think that bridge should have been named Danny Bell,
Thank you.
but it was named
Briggs.
What?
And he fought that bridge?
Yeah, he
tooth
didn't want
and
that
nail.
bridge in because you know why? He built the first grocery store. You know where Jitters is? That was our first mall. He built Parkgate. Briggs built Parkgate, 2-story building in '74. It was in operation, full operation '74, but it was being built in '73. And he didn't want anybody to bypass Eagle River, but that was going to make people get off the highway and they could just go up Eagle River Valley. Mm-hmm.
That's what he thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think the communities and the subdivisions were built in increments. Mm-hmm. I can remember on
That's a good choice of words.
Skyline, 3 houses. At the bottom was Pat Node, in the middle was Mac McQuarrie, and at the top was Bill Hildreth. Then Wallace came in and built the ranch
At the top.
at the top,
At
and
the
that's where the hang gliders would jump off and come to land in Pipples Field.
Right. So when you say the ranch, is that like the abandoned homestead cabin thing that's
Yes,
up there
and,
at the top?
and he had
of the
horses up there, and he was renting horse rides, and he was gonna, try to expand it, but he had some issues. Patty, am I getting this right? Some issues with crossing some property over to where his ranch was, and that's how come they put the gate. Do you remember that?
I don't know all the facts about that, but yeah,
Yeah.
there was a access
Yeah.
issue, I think.
That's what we've always been real careful with about where we are, because the tourist yosies like to drive up our roads and get up there into the mountains, which is all private property.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to restrict, so the state couldn't come in and take those roads as public access, we had to keep gates on them and shoot them, whenever.
Yeah, just the little stuff, yeah. As one does. Yeah, so we ran into issues with the access. 'Cause, I wonder about this every time, like, I walk by, like, this abandoned, like, cabin thing up there. So ran into issues just with the access and everything. They just get tired of fighting it and then just left? Or, like, what's the...
Well, I do believe there was some financial that came involved also.
Yeah.
With that until when Till died. I know his granddaughter Stephanie got and I'm not sure all the circumstances. There was some issues with that. He was really a wonderful
But
person.
he continued to live in the area until
Yes,
he died.
till he
Yeah.
died. Yeah, yeah,
But
and
just not.
just not up there. And it got and then the state came in. We used to ride snow machines over that mountain into Ptarmigan Valley in Peters Creek. We rode dirt bikes over that mountain. And in the wintertime, we rode Volkswagen hoods down the skyline for sledding.
Remember Suicide Hill, Thomas?
Oh, yeah. And so Monty...
It's like there's always a suicide hill.
Yeah, Monty Road is now lower than it used to be, but it used to be steeper. And at the bottom of that hill was the main only road. Back in the day, it wasn't called the Glen Highway. It was called the Palmer Highway. The double lane wasn't out there till in the 70s. And so when you come down Monty, you were coming out, going north or south, Anchorage or going south, whatever.
Right.
And you would be, but the traffic was not very much, So we were pretty safe, but it got where we couldn't do it no more.
Right.
Right.
Was the Chugiak State Park established yet? Because it...
No.
Okay.
But it started getting, that's when they made everything closed to motorized vehicles. They up on Skyline, you can walk it and hike it, but you can't ride anything motorized. Sure, you can ski it. It's quite a trail from Skyline to Ptarmigan Valley, but it's beautiful.
Right.
We used to take sheep trails with our horses up over the pass from Ram Valley into Peters Creek. A little hairy, but
Yeah. Like, how far of a trek would that be?
it's a day.
It's a day. Okay.
At least a day.
Fair enough.
Well, that used to be open too. I remember because we used to go in there hunting we had little Willie Jeeps. And
Yeah, I got a full curl and then some out of there. Those herds were wonderful back there because nobody went back there.
Sure.
What was the culture like back then? Like, was there kind of a sense of collective community culture, or?
Oh, the Brindells. Remember when they came in and they were very involved with the orchestra in Anchorage?
Yes, Eleanor Brindell was my violin teacher in 7th grade.
Okay. And they brought a lot to the community. And then,
The Methodist Church.
oh yeah, and you
Everything was
look
around.
back at the bells.
Yes.
We had can dentures. There is a few of them today still alive in their 90s, like 95, 96, still living.
Well, I just
Joanne.
think about like people getting together to do things, and we had no state maintenance on Highland Road.
Right.
What was Highland Road became Highland Road was not state maintained,
No.
and the homesteaders there started a road association where everybody paid in $50 a year, and they paid people that homesteaded to do the plowing.
And then
Because they had to.
You do it for yourself.
Yeah, and I think they still have that issue behind the visitor
yeah,
center.
because that's supposed to be private.
Because my house, we had to pay so much a year, and then when we opened Sam and Sons Polaris, there'd be some big snows in there, and they couldn't get out. We'd get a phone call, and John would go up with snow machines and sleds and take in supplies to them because they couldn't get out of there because of the high snow. Yeah.
Then when Chugiak High School was built, then that became our social center because everybody showed up for games and whatnot.
That's a really good point. So when did the high school come in?
64.
64. Okay, outstanding. What was kind of the physical weather climate like back then?
Cold and deep snow.
Deep snow.
There was nothing to be up to the 5-foot fence. And then, like December and January, you go down the road of Maine or Eagle River, every car in the driveway had hoods up, space heaters trying to keep the from freezing, And, I don't even know.
It did seem like it was a time when we could expect 2 or 3 weeks of 20 below every year.
Oh, yeah.
And we
We
just
don't get that no
have
more.
that now.
And then at that time, the girls couldn't wear pants to school, so
Yes.
that was an issue.
Yeah, that would be a problem. Yeah. And so I'm kind of glad to hear y'all say that because I remember like back in like early 2000s thinking, I'm like looking back and going, okay, maybe I'm just looking back and like it was snowing 2 feet of snow both ways on the way to school and all that. And it's like maybe I'm just remembering it as being colder than it was, but
It was.
yeah, okay, it
We
was.
sure got a lot more snow. it
I
seems
don't
like
know
then.
about you girls, but I don't ever remember having too many snow days. We'd have ice days. And when we had ice days, there was usually Chinooks with it, wind. And I would go out and walk up almost to Meadow Creek, and we could put our coats like this, and the wind would just let us skate down the road all the way to Monty Road.
Yes, we had the 20 below, but we also had the midwinter Chinooks that would melt everything.
Right,
So.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
that was our climate.
that's the climate.
But we had there was nothing to build tunnels in those 5-foot fences with all the snow and then of course, the cars with all the just big poofs look like smoke, but it's fog from the space heater.
Right.
My dad got the space heater too close to the Cadillac, and I come around and I opened the door to the house. Dad, is the grill of the car supposed to be melting? He melted the Cadillac grill.
Oh, geez.
He was in trouble.
That's what you want to see first thing in the morning. It's a great little start to the day.
Yes. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, outstanding. So, Eagle River has obviously developed quite a bit over the years. What would you guys say are some of the big key events that kind of spurred that growth and development?
Was there an influence of more military? I think they grew bigger.
Well, I think so. It became a place where military people would
Well, it was cheaper.
have housing here rather than in Anchorage. And also, once the highway became more than 2 lanes, it was more practical for people to commute to work from Eagle River.
And then, we had the schools by then, too.
Yeah,
So people knew.
that their kids would have schools to go
Right.
to.
Sounds like it was quite an ordeal getting those schools out here, though. What did all that entail?
We're doing the history right now on 14 schools, and 2 are not in operation, which is the industrial school of Eklutna. That was huge. I don't know if you've ever seen the pictures of it.
I don't
There
think
was
I
a
have.
hospital, boys' dorm, a girls' dorm, shop, hospital, nurses.
I don't-
Did you ever see that? We have it at the office.
Yeah.
It's really fantastic, and we're really trying to get it more visible so that new people come into town can see how it was developed. But see, now all those buildings have been. Well, I know some were sold off and were moved, and we have a young girl that's passionate about her history that just joined us in volunteering, and she's doing some research, finding out exactly where some of all these buildings went.
Right.
But the territorial school on the old highway across from Chugiak Cafe, it's still there and active. But we have people in this community that can drive down the old road, and they just think that's the dog park and the obedience place. They don't have a clue that it's the territorial school. And that was built and opened in 1951.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was that old.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I know.
And the second building, where Head Start was, it
That's
was
pretty
built in
new.
53.
Man, it's a lot of
And I
history
remember
there.
when
Yeah.
we were there in the
Yes.
6th grade, that auditorium was huge. And now you go down there and it's just like a shoebox.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're trying to get more. We just put a new sign out on that sign that has us more visible because the sign was old. But I still think, the 2-story building's called the Elsie Oberg Building. It was named after Elsie. And she was a substitute teacher from 1st grade to 12th grade. Elsie Oberg, before she passed away.
And you never want her to get angry with you because she could thunk with her finger.
On your knuckles. She was a character. But the Obergs, the family of the Obergs are still here. They have that, where Oberg Road is and where the horses are. That's one of her daughters still living in the home today that she was raised in.
Man, that's wild.
I know.
Like, I mean, military brat growing up. So the thought of like having generational connections to an area is kind of foreign to me.
And
so.
they were one of the few farmers that was
Actually, a farmer.
farmer.
My dad used to buy hay from Russ Oberg.
Yeah. And he would come with his tractor and help Mr. Pipple, Walt Pipple, do the potatoes and the cabbage in Pipple's field. I mean, our community just started. Everybody helped everybody, and then a lot of the property, a lot of them, the homesteaders that got the 160 acres eventually realized their land was gold, and they started subdividing, and that opened up a lot of growth also.
Right. I mean, one thing that's always interested me about, communities that, what's the right word? There's not a whole lot of land to develop on it. Like Eagle River is great, and there's also not a whole lot of buildable land, as you would
Right.
think, because we're right up against so many mountains and J-Bear and everything. Yeah, so it kind of comes down to just when people with the big lands parcels are willing to start
Exactly.
selling those
Exactly.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And starting to get to that point, but yeah, I mean, I think probably the next big area of development is probably, let's see, I think it's left side of the Eagle River Road.
Right.
Like, we've got development on that. I bet, like, over on the right-hand side, like the Highland side, you're probably going to start seeing some development down that way, but that's still going to take probably
Years.
decades to get there.
Do you have any idea how many people live on Island Side?
I don't know now. I know that when we first moved there, our family was were the only ones that lived there year round. There were some homesteaders that lived there in the summer, but moved out in the winter. And
That's the hardest thing to adjust to. You're on the homestead, and now all of a sudden, I can see neighbors.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, God.
How did, because I mean, you got all the folks that are here and, you know, this is their life and everything, and now everyone's kind of moving in. Like, what was that friction like as a community, kind of getting used to, you know, having neighbors?
Well,
as a kid, I liked it.
yeah. Well, you know, I mean, with the way I
like
was
the peace and
raised,
quiet.
you know, Dad said we need a laundromat. Okay. Well, before we got the laundromat in '61, the same year Eagle River Grade School opened, there was no city sewer. Okay. The lots behind the Baptist church, my dad owned 3 lots. That became a leach field for the dumping of the washers from the laundromat. It went under the road. Well, then, you know, then it grew. He goes, oh, now I need a poop pumper, right? So he got a cesspool pumper truck, and then the municipality told him where, or it was a borough then, where he could dump it in different gravel pits. It was just gray water. It wasn't, you know, the other. And that's when Bernie over in Highland put the racetrack in. He put the racetrack in and said, hey, Clarence, can I use that truck to water the track? And he did. So it was community after community affair. Everybody worked together. There was, you know, like I said, Denny Bell and Briggs had an issue. Mr. Oberg and Mr. Whaley had an issue in Peters Creek. There was a few issues, but they always worked them out. And of course, everybody in the community kind of had a chuckle sometimes. But
Of course they did.
but
Yeah.
you know, these schools, these kids need, like that territory school. There was a group of kids growing up in Swanee Slopes and where Parksville was, and you're going, what's Parksville? It's where Klondike, Moosehorn is, but it was first called Parksville. They had a mass of kids in this whole community. They thought only 55, and guess what? When the school opened, it was like 72. Mm-hmm. Uh-oh. The next year they had to have Quonset huts right away.
And when I came up here, they were Quonset huts, and Mr. Kerr had to keep the stove going, you know, and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, we had an oil
What's that?
stove
I
in
came
those.
from overseas. I couldn't even experience anything
What's a
like
Quonset
that.
hut? Is this like a yurt or? I feel
Mil-
very
or
privileged
mil-
not knowing what this is, but
A Quonset hut, really?
They're
no
on
clue.
They're the semicircular corrugated metal buildings
Okay,
that the
okay.
military mobs out and demobs.
I want you to drive
that wouldn't
from
be fun in. Okay.
I want you to go Birchwood Loop, south to north, and you can count the Quonset huts, okay? And there's probably at least 20.
I'll go take a look.
And they have I mean, it was a military. You know, in Hawaii, they still have Quonset huts for the military on the Big Island.
and when as the military surplus things,
Right.
Then a lot of people were civil service. I mean, my dad bought a tank crate for a chicken house, and brought it home. You know?
Didn't know that was a thing. Like,
Yeah, well, you got a crate. You got to get those tanks shipped on somehow. You know?
When we grew up, I got to be honest with you, going to the dump was like shopping because the military. Remember that they go, oh, the dumping of a bunch of surplus. They had to throw it away, and if you got there before they took the cat and covered it up, you could get it. And people were just backing their trucks up and loading stuff up. You know, I know that Diane Oberg, I went from 1st grade to 12th grade with her, and she said, my dad said, it's dump day, and we all jumped in the car because we didn't want to, the truck, we didn't want to miss what we were going to drag home. That's a true story. Now, don't, yeah.
That's awesome.
When
When
Bernie
did-
Stewart was the dump contractor,
Oh,
one of the homesteaders up on Highland Road had the contract to run the dump where Eagle River High School is now.
oh yes, I remember that.
And my brothers were teenagers, and they worked for him on Saturdays, and he paid them $10 for the whole day, and anything they could haul away could be theirs.
I bet they were hauling away stuff.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
Mom, we got a new washing machine. Look,
It's like, and yeah, I'm sure back then the stuff was like much better quality. Nowadays, like
Oh yeah, plastic now.
gets
yeah.
thrown away, and it's
yeah.
like that should have been thrown away a couple of years ago.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a true fact, though.
Good times. When did they put in like the dump over off of kind of the Highland area? Was that always the dump site?
No,
Well, I mean,
no.
I know the Eagle River High School. That was the
That was in the middle.
yeah.
You know where Three Bears is?
Yeah.
That was the second one, but the first one was where out here is the old Palmer Highway, right? You get down past the territorial school, and when you go down the hill to go to Peters Creek, where the
That's a dump
school
site.
is that the Chugiak grade school
Yes,
now?
yes,
The new
Chugiak.
Chugiak grade school. That was a dump.
Chugiak
That was the
dump.
first dump. And this road and that
you just
curve,
dumped it over the
curve
side of the
past
hill.
Spring Creek was always certain times of the year was very icy. My dad flipped the truck going to the dump loaded at Spring Creek curve.
That was a 90-degree curve.
It was not, and you know, my mom would say, "Remember the curve, don't." And there'd be trash all over the road. But that was the first, you know, it was all over the hill, and there is still some remains of old cars over that one, and over where Three Bears is, you can find a few there. They cleaned up
Most of
where-
it.
the high
yeah.
school pretty good,
Right.
But that was just short lived, and then they opened that one.
Yeah, and you can still find. Okay, so is the racetrack still exist? Is it completely like covered over, gone?
On
'Cause-
Highland,
yes, it's a subdivision.
it's a
Okay,
subdivision.
okay.
Yep.
Because I was about to say I've heard about this
Yeah.
fabled racetrack, hiked around that area, never ran into it. I found like some old rusted out cars,
Sure, sure.
but
Yeah.
no racetrack.
There,
Yeah.
but I think
That's Bernie, right?
yeah, Bernie. There was a racetrack at Paradise Haven though.
Yes.
and it was
Down below.
So like when you pull up the parking, it's like the lower parking lot, then out toward where all the grass is, and they would have they did ovals, and then some of the river, part of the river, we did snow machines for a while, but that was because the Barclays, the boys,
Right.
were into snow machines at the time.
Right, right.
Yep.
So another big kind of milestone event for most communities in this area was the '64 earthquake.
Oh.
Yeah. How'd we do in '64?
Well, I'll start with mine. I was on 4th Avenue, so we lived in Eagle
Oh,
River.
geez.
Lord.
It's like ground
Three-
zero.
3 parking meters away, it dropped. So we were on the up. But we had just left J.C. Penney's where the slabs fell. We were parked where the slabs fell. So on 4th Avenue was a Shimmick's record shop. My sister's birthday's March 30th. She wanted the Beatles album, I Wanna Hold Your Hand. So we were in the Shimmick's record shop buying that, and you could see the port. It started shaking. The windows started shaking. And I decided I better go out, and I grabbed a parking meter, okay? And everything, windows, and your car's going this way, and you're trying to catch maybe the car to hang on to it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do that, It ended, and we thought, how do we get to Eagle River? Because we didn't know if Eagle River Bridge would be intact. And that bridge is not even here today. It was a curvy road down to the hill. We got over the hill. We come up the hill, and right before the VFW, where the VFW is, we had a piece of property, and it was just used to be a bakery, and it was a concrete building, kind of right before where the Jack White building is today. It was totally there. It wasn't standing. Keep going a little bit further. Eagle River Grade School, the whole gym.
On where the gym is.
Yeah.
And you know what? In the November earthquake again,
did the same thing.
It did the same thing.
Because it's on a fault. So we pulled into the laundromat, which is right by the Baptist Church in Eagle River. And our house that's where I was raised, between the Eagle River Hotel, and you probably would remember it as a tattoo parlor, but it was Eagle River Laundry. Our windows were still intact. The cesspool pumper was in between the two lots of the house, but Dad said it bounced like this in that earthquake. And where the grocery store is, where Jitters is, they lost all the windows.
Yeah.
But all the houses from the church to Meadow Creek all lost their wells.
Yeah.
So they lost
Water
the wells
went,
just because
went dry.
Well, what happened
just
was-
cracked open.
I lost ours.
Yeah, everybody did, even laundromat, the school. And what happened, though, is Mr. Summerall, that owned the 5 acres
He had
on Firehouse Lane, he realized his well has now become an artesian well. It all went to an underground river. That artesian well today is underneath that
Wow.
tennis court
Right.
by the high school.
Right.
Yeah, on Seabolt Road. Yeah.
Yeah. So it just completely
Well, we didn't have
redesigned like the
Yeah.
entire makeup of the area. Really.
Well, yes, and we didn't have school for a while because the gym was our lunchroom. Okay.
And we double shifted.
And it took a while. Everybody had to get wells re-drilled, especially the laundromat. And we got we got it first, and then people were hauling water from the laundromat. You know, again, the whole community pulled together. People boiled water. We all packed. When we got home, we were told we were going to have a tsunami. Well, the inland's not very far from us. So everybody was packing to go up to Skyline. But they called it off. We didn't get the tsunami. But it
Not like it did
affected
in
us.
Seward.
And, like Kay said, when the 2018 came, the damage of Eagle River Grade School, and it went right up Eagle River Valley, that fault. Mrs. Vanover's house survived the 64 earthquake. It had $90,000 worth of damage in 2018, her house. So it just, that was a bad earthquake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the road to Palmer dropped, so people couldn't go past Eklutna or thereabouts, right?
Yeah. Right.
What happened to the bridge? Like, was it? I mean, you were able to make
It
the
was
drive.
intact. I don't remember. They just inspected it. I know that. And some of the other bridges, like south going towards Seward, the road was here and the bridge was here. It was off-centered. Now, Eagle River did not do that, but they did inspect it.
Yeah, Dad had just crossed the bridge, and he was just getting past, where that chute comes down? Just gotten past that, and then he thought he had flat tires. So he got
sure.
out, and there went the snow right past him. Got home. He got on the right side.
Right.
Got home.
Right.
And
Yeah,
then-
there wasn't a lot of traffic on that Palmer Highway because of the Connect River Bridge. And, the way I understood it first, people walked across the bridge of that Connect River, the old one, and they would just swap keys.
Yeah.
And then people trusted people, and we'll meet back at 5, and I'll give you. That's how they did it for just about 4 or 5 days is what I understood.
Wow. I never heard that story. That's
Yeah,
a cool story.
yeah. That was on the old Connect Bridge.
That's kind of telling,
Yeah.
actually, indicative of the times.
Well, and it just really shows you people trusted people,
Right.
And none of us locked our doors back then or anything.
And that earthquake was in the days when communication was slow.
oh yeah,
People didn't have a lot of folks didn't even
had
have a
a phone.
telephone,
Yeah.
and family from outside were waiting to hear our
yeah. Are you
their
okay?
folks say okay.
I'm not, I have a sister we adopted from Korea. And guess what? She was on her way there. So she got left in, all the rest went to New York, and she got left in Seattle with my aunt until the Red Cross could get hold of us, make sure we were alive.
Yeah.
And then they flew her in to the military side there at the international airport so we could get her.
Isn't that
Earthquake,
something?
baby.
Well,
It's like, welcome to the U.S.
well, that's how it was. Red Cross, people were. It was a terror. When this 2018 happened, I was off on Friday. I was in my recliner reading the newspaper, and it started, and boom, the power was off. Right,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and my husband was home. I said, "Grab the TV." He grabbed the TV, and it was going. I could hear my kitchen cabinets opening.
Yeah.
Everything opened.
Well, I was holding up the hutch, and Mom says, "Get out of here."
Well, they do take you back. It takes me back to the '64 earthquake. You don't know if the ground's going to open up and close, and you don't know how long they're going to last because it can be bad.
Yeah. Well, the thing that's always impressed me about the '64 earthquake is like the violence of the shakes in 2018 was about the same. The difference was like 2018 lasted like 48 seconds.
This was 5
And
minutes.
64 was like 5 minutes.
I know. I know. I was black and blue for my collarbone, so I was born in '53, and this is '64, so it tells my age. And I had brand new patent leather shoes, and we didn't notice them. When you get a pair of shoes at the store at Penny's, you want to wear them. Oh, you can wear them home. Well, my mother didn't have any idea I was going to scuff them up the way I did. Well, I didn't scuff them up. The land I was rolling on scuffed them up. So, back in the day, Mom said, "Okay, let's get some Vaseline and try to get the scuffs off." Brand new Easter shoes. Oh well, what the heck?
Absolutely. Oh, man.
I was on the top of greening at the 2018 one.
Oh,
We just opened up all of our Chromebooks to start math.
wow.
It was incredible. Wow, it's so noisy because that whole thing is like metal.
Metal.
And so it was just screaming.
That building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought about it when I was in Eagle River because our population is so much bigger than 64, right? Like, how are people going to get home? And I guess that was time consuming in some places. And that's
Was.
when our commerce was saying they had a couple gatherings trying to prepare us for any big earthquakes, which this community the state needs to be prepared for that anytime, all the time.
So
'Cause
in
they
the
can happen.
in the elementary schools, for a long time, at the beginning of school, we had to bring in bags
Oh,
with
yes.
a change of clothes and some, little fruit treats and some water and stuff. And then we would store them in big tubs. So in case there was another one, we could take care of the little ones. I don't know if they still do that, but
Do you
for
know?
years we did that.
I'm not sure. Like I worked as a sub myself and also worked as a teacher over at Eagle River Christian Academies. And I was actually in a classroom of like middle schools, high schoolers when 2018
That's
happened.
my
So we
favorite,
weren't
the
we
middle
weren't too
school.
far away.
Yeah, yeah.
But I've not heard of that. But I mean, also maybe that's something that's just been done. And I just wasn't aware of it. But definitely useful because like 2018 happened and like books were knocked all over the places. I had to like, kick down doors SWAT style to get into like the elementary schoolroom to get those kids out of there. And
So is
then-
that the one that's on the Loop Road? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Baranoff and
yep.
At Greening,
that's it.
half the kids had their phones in their lockers. Well, I couldn't send them to their lockers and get their phones. So, but I had
wow.
one of the few phones at work. So guess what? When we finally got us out there to the parking lot where we could sit and freeze to death till they got us a bus or whatever.
it
I had to
happened
use my
one time,
phone.
9 in the morning, wasn't it?
And
It
then
was
you're-
early.
yeah.
And then the parents would have to come, but they have to prove who they are.
Oh,
to
yeah.
Take the kids. Was that a rigmarole? We had one computer.
Yeah, luckily, okay, so for me, I didn't have to worry about that as much. Like my role, as soon as like I got the kids outside, got everything somewhat corralled, I had to start thinking, okay, we need to go shut off the gas to that building. So like I go in there. It's like, you know,
To the classroom.
to the
building.
the
Yeah.
classroom. So you got the church, then
Yeah.
you've got the school, and went into the church building. And I mean, it's a you have to go through the storage room to get to the utility room, which in retrospect might not be the best design, but it is what it is. But stereotypical church storage room stuff is all over the place, you know, especially with the earthquake and everything that's happened. I'm like picking my way through there. And I'm like, dude, there's so much stuff. Another earthquake happens. I don't know if I'm getting back through this, but I get to the utility room and I hear like loud hissing like all over the place, and I see like the levers, and it's like I don't know what I'm looking at. Like
Right.
I see some red levers. I don't know if I'm supposed to pull that. Like, but then like the ground starts shaking again. It's like, you know what? We're gonna just
Yeah.
hope for the best.
Yeah,
So pulled
hope
all
for
the
this.
levers and just got the heck out of there. But
Oh
luckily they were the
my
right ones.
gosh.
The history of that school building, the building that you were in, the classroom, used to be a tinplex that my dad owned and built.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and they were going to tear that tinplex down, and where the church was carport. Do you remember the big carport? And then he had a storage lot where Snowcat and his hunting buggies were. He lived in one of the apartments at the tinplex. They inspected it after they kind of somewhat gutted it, but they hadn't demolished it. And the engineer said, this is good bones. Just build the classrooms here. So the structure did not come down. And that's was my dad's tinplex.
I didn't.
Do you remember it being black and white tinplex?
I don't remember.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can say you did a good job.
Yeah,
'cause,
well,
I
I
mean,
know-
I was in that building. I was like, dude, this whole thing should come down
I know
any
the
second
framers.
now.
I know the framers, and they were good framers, and it was framed well. And I mean, and the engineer said, "I think this is a waste to tear it down," and they didn't. They have. How many classrooms are in that?
Oh man,
You know.
off the top of my head, I couldn't say, but we'll say probably. I'm gonna say at least 4, probably closer to like 6 or something like that. But yeah, it's some pretty good space in there.
Your kids, did all your kids go to that Christian school?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they did.
It's a good school.
Yeah. Huh. Everything's connected here.
Yes, it is. It is.
You know, that's one of the things that's still true about Eagle River.
Everything, everyone's connected one way or the
Yeah.
other. So one more question I did have, the Eagle River Nature Center. That's obviously like a big draw for everyone here in the area. Like I still go down there probably once a week or so, just to kind of walk around. I know it didn't originally start as a nature center and like kind of a tourist destination. So how did
He's
it
got
get
a lot
started?
of history.
It was a Paradise Haven Lodge. It was cool.
But we have the new photo album, the history of that building. You just donated it to
Yeah,
the
because
society.
my father-in-law worked with that senator, the one that just passed away. That would have been there forever. I'm
Young?
having a brain fart. No,
Young? No.
the other one, the older one. Anyhow,
Don Young.
Dong Yen.
no, not
Stevens?
Don Young, Stevens.
Stevens?
Yeah,
Okay, Stevens.
So anyhow, he donated his book that he put all together with Stevens to make that a connection to the Iditarod.
Oh.
So there is a book back there that shows the history and how that got started and why that became that way. Because you see, when you go all the way back to the glacier,
Yes.
there are concrete bunkers back there
Oh.
that Harvey and the Pollard boys used to play in. That was the connection to that.
I see.
It's interesting, but you wouldn't see it now. It's probably all overgrown.
Right.
But that lodge is something else.
Do they have
The
any
history.
other history up in? I haven't been in the nature center for years.
Been in there for
They've got that
Probably
book
10
there.
years.
where
Do
you
they
can
have some
access it.
history in there about it?
I don't remember.
Because the
We need to
last
probably
time
take
I
a
was in
field
there, they
trip.
still had
Yeah,
that book
it's-
that he had
It's more about the
donated
nature.
besides the
you
one I
know,
gave
that's
her.
most what they're pushing.
Well, and of course they want that, but I think they should still have a little bit about how the property,
Came into
how
being, yeah.
Barclays got it, and why it became the nature center. It's perfect place for the nature center for sure, and it's at the make a trailhead, and
Because we
and
used
the
to get
military.
milk and eggs and stuff there.
Well, and the military have trained on that Crow Pass for years because my husband's ex-military. I don't know how many times he had to run it, and helicopters and all that,
And up to the time we had our runway before they closed us,
Oh, yeah.
idiots closed us down. Well, they used to use that as a drop-off point to get them to the river so those guys could train on the river.
Did you ever hike it?
Man, I think I've hiked it like 6 times at this point.
Oh,
So, yeah.
Across Crow Pass.
Cross Crow Pass, yeah. Ran it once.
The
Yeah.
race?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
What was your time?
I think it was like 4:30 or something like that. Like, I'd have to go back and look at it.
Nice.
But, I mean, yeah.
how cool is that?
Yeah, it was. Oof, that was a slugfest. It was a hot year, and I remember one time I was so cramped, like I fell down. And I've never had this happen before. I fell down, and I felt both my calves just Charlie horse at the same time. So tight, I had to get up, like I was on my tippy toes, and I had to just slowly ease my way
my
down.
gosh.
It was like I need some water.
And then at one time we had a cable to get across the river.
Oh,
You
yeah,
guys
but that
remember
was down
Yeah, tell down
further.
that.
We have some history of that at
Yeah.
the office because Phyllis was involved in that.
Right.
And that's where that property that you had spoke of earlier in the valley part.
Right.
And over toward Highland side, too. And it went across to Highland side.
Mm-hmm. And it was
there
just
was
a
a-
cable.
And it was
but we
past
had-
Donnelly's, if you remember.
Right, right.
I mean, the end of the road used to be Donnelly's, and then it became Prudhoe Bay. Then there was this trail to Paradise Haven. It was a trail. It wasn't much of a road.
Yeah. And with so was it almost like a hand tram thing, or literally just a cable? And
It was a cable, and then they had a chair,
Yeah.
hooked in so we could, sit on it and pull ourselves
We
over.
have some
Okay.
pictures of it, and the pictures came from Johnny
Yeah.
Johnson's family. Yeah.
interesting. Well, I'd be interested in
Yeah.
going and seeing if we can find any remnants of it. 'Cause
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, that would be fun to see it would be past North Fork for sure. That where you put in there up further, and is it marked where Donnelly's? There's a house where Donnelly's used to be. Do you know where Donnelly's?
I thought it was farther back than that, more towards the nature center, but I'm not sure because I
Well,
used
you know
to.
where
don't know.
Phyllis is. Phyllis is
Right.
by PNM, right before PNM. Her house.
I thought that
What's
was back
that
farther.
street that's Highland Crest or that subdivision? That big
Hillcrest.
not Hillcrest.
I don't know.
What's the subdivision that's across from PNM Garden?
man, I'm not
opposite.
sure. Not sure actually.
I remember that's when Jack Stewart subdivided his 160 acres. That became a huge, well, and it hooks up to, what's the name? Across, if you go to Wren and go into that big subdivision, it can go into Stewart Drive.
Right.
Yeah, all that opened up. So I believe it's not very far past Donnelly's is where that tram was.
Too bad it's not up in the Crow Pass
No,
and
yeah.
all that. The water is
Where you can not have to go through the water.
yeah, that's a problem during the race, honestly. I remember one year, I was signed up to do it, ended up not doing it because I was up there a week or so before the actual race, and I saw full size cottonwoods just getting thrown down the river. It's like, guys, I'm not going in that
I
water.
don't think it's going to be that way this year. I bet it's pretty low
Yeah, let's hope so.
because we didn't get much snow. So they're not going to be unless we get a lot of rain. I don't know.
Yeah,
My
I know
garlic
it's-
didn't come up this year. What little I have is about that high. Usually by this time it's up to here.
Give it time.
Yeah, get some more rain here.
Yeah.
All right, well, I got just a couple more questions, and I'll let you all go.
Okay.
So, if someone who has lived in Eagle River for a few years were to go back in time, what do you believe he or she would find the most striking about kind of the Eagle River of kind of the yesteryears?
The communities. We were pulled together on our major projects.
Well, just like when we needed a fire truck, I think back of Mrs. Malden started one of our few first newspapers. didn't take a penny of the proceeds, and printed it at home, and they bought the first volunteer fire department for our community. And the community just rallied, and that was, if we had a gathering, it usually was at the territorial school.
Right.
And then they eventually opened another little community. Do you remember that little building that was on the property where the senior center is now? And they would have, I think it was.
I don't remember that
I
one
really
either.
think it was either a Legion or a Lions Club for a while. And everybody, if the community called out that we needed something, they made it happen.
They all came together. It was.
Well, one of the things about Eagle River in the 60s was you had to drive through it to get to Palmer. There was no bypass. The New Glen Highway wasn't built then. And so when you drove through Eagle River, you were driving through downtown Eagle
I
River.
can't imagine it
Now,
happening today.
Eagle River, people
Bridge
in Eagle River
apocalypse.
like that the traffic bypasses them.
Yeah.
Well, that's just like us when we go, we have a cabin on the Yatna River. When we would go to the Deska Landing, and you have to go through Wasilla. Look at that mess.
Yeah, that's
I-
exactly
can
what
you
I was
imagine,
thinking.
Can you imagine that road right out here where you pull into here, still just the only way, north or south? It would
Well-
be unreal.
Wait until there's an accident on the Glen and they have to redirect through Eagle River. It's
they do
bumper.
do it.
It's just
Yeah. And they
ridiculous.
go
I'm
everywhere.
always glad I'm going to Mirror Lake.
Yeah, well, I remember the bridge apocalypse a couple of years
Oh,
ago.
yes.
Oh my gosh, that was
They didn't know where to go. They were
Yeah.
up the Loop Hill, and then Briggs, okay, here. It was a mess.
yeah. This should be like a case study in why you need to have multiple bridges and ways in and out of like a big population area. But I digress.
You're right.
All right, last question. So, if someone from the first generation of people who have been here in Eagle River and Chugiak were to come to our current day, what do you believe he or she would find most striking about the community now?
Let's see.
The traffic.
Yeah.
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 Just that.
Yeah, the traffic.
Yeah. The how built up it is.
Yeah. They would be astounded with cars
Well, yeah.
and all
I
of that.
show videos of our community when somebody has posted something, sharing, and it might be going up Eagle River Valley, on our historical page. And some of the people that grew up here went to the territorial school. Maybe they were here in the 50s, and they live. I think of Susan Nickerson. Her father was the owner of the trailer court that was behind Jitters, that now has all those townhouses. At one time, he was like the third or fourth owner. And she says, I can't believe my home looks like this, the growth, And there's been good. And of course, because my dad was a contractor, and there was a lot of people that weren't up for growth, if you remember. But he was part of the growth.
Yeah.
And, he built houses or built businesses. And it's just par for the course. We're going to grow. We're still growing.
Just kind of a question of how is that growth going to happen, though?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if exits pull us through. We got to buy all these schools and all this land and become a working government again.
Be interesting.
Yeah.
I'd like to. I think we're going to start being active in that. Do they have a schedule that they meet once a month?
You can Facebook. They come both Facebook and they will email you.
Okay, I'm going to get on that.
Just
Yep.
give them some money and then you'll never know.
They'll come find you.
Sure. Okay.
Outstanding. Well, ladies, thank you very much for joining us and kind
you for
of sharing
having
your.
us.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to hear from folks that can kind of talk about a lot of this stuff because it's kind of hard to find out information sometimes on how things came to be in a small town. So, thank you very much, and everyone else, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.